Okay, we're almost finished with our nut gauge. Previous video we drilled it with a tap drill, around 1.25 inches deep, maybe a little deeper. And we used that technique of leaving our tailstock loose while the tap was pulled into the hole by turning the chuck by hand. That got it started, a few threads that kept the tap straight. Then we could loosen the drill chuck and take it to the vise and run it in to the depth we needed. Okay, so now we're ready to get a hacksaw and saw that end off, because we're finished with our centers. We've already drilled one of the centers out, and now we're going to get rid of the other center. And then we'll face it off in the lathe. Alright, we're going to feed our tool very slowly because we're going to be clamping on the 15/16 diameter that's way back here. So we're going to be hanging out over probably around 4 or 5 inches at least, and that's not a real good practice. So you got to have a very sharp tool. We'll probably use our right-handed cutting tool holder, and just like we did when we first faced our nut gauge off after we sawed it off in the cutoff saw. So we'll do that and we'll be finished with our nut gauge. So let's go to the lathe. Okay. Now we could do this in the lathe. We could chuck up and cut that off with a hacksaw, but somebody might need that lathe, so I'll just for a few minutes. So I'll just use my vise and my hacksaw. Take little short strokes to get my curve started. I want to be careful when I cut it all the way off. I don't want the bottom of my my hacksaw to dent up my to damage the surface of my taper. So I'm going to be very careful that I don't Okay, almost hit it, but still looks good. So let's go to the lathe and machine that off. Chuck up on 15/16 diameter, and we'll be done. Okay. I'm going to use my right-handed tool holder. It's one I use for facing. gonna whip it up to about 430. I'm gonna go about 625 this time. See what that does. I might do 855. 855. 855. Small cuts because it's sticking out there a long way. So I got a real sharp edge right there. So when I'm polishing this, I'll hit that with some sandpaper and get rid of that sharp edge. Okay, our part is supposed to be 5 3/8 long. So 5" 375. I'm going to take my dial calipers and measure that. 5.375. Make sure I don't measure any chips. And that dimension is plus or minus a 64th, so let's see what it. So it's right at 5" 390. So that's on the high side. I mean, that's on the high side. That's okay. You know what? I'm going to take just a hair off, a little bit more. So I'm just going to touch it. Not supposed to leave my cookie in the chuck. That's not safe at all. So I took about 7 thousandths off of it. So I'm a little on, I'm 7 thousandths oversized, so that's plenty. That's within tolerance, so I'm good to go. So, like I said before, I'm going to polish this. Now I can clamp on my threads just a little bit, enough to just, not very much, because I don't want to damage my thread. So I'm just going to maybe tighten it up very lightly so I can polish that diameter right there. And of course you can always clamp on the 15/16 diameter to polish the taper. So, all right, we are done with the nut gauge.